Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first of many ACCM forums called Wellsprings Wisdom from the Word for a Better World. I am Bishop Harold Steve Blair, your host and moderator. Welcome this evening. One of the key functions of the Association of Christian Communicators and Media, the ACCM, is to stage a series of public forums to bring Christian positions on critical issues affecting the nation to the national discourse. This is the first of the series. Crime and violence tops the list of major concerns of every Jamaican and the Church of Jesus Christ of Nazareth, as the purveyor of peace in the earth has a role to play in the communities. The ACCM hopes that this forum will not only serve to highlight that role, but will light a pathway to meaningful engagement, godly activation, and the required results. Against this background, we hope for the forum to explore and examine 1. The contributors, social, economical, political, and spiritual, these contributors of crime at the community level. 2. The role of negative influencers, such as gangs. And 3. The role of the positive or good influencers, the church, home, school, etc. 4. The role of the church in promoting, supporting, and or reinforcing positive influence and influencers like the police and other youth clubs, use of sports and cultural or performing arts. And 5. The church as a promoter of peace and justice. To discuss the absence of justice, aka injustice, as a root cause of crime aggravated by poor conflict management skills. Our guests to help us do that today are Attorney at Law, Superintendent of Police Gladys Brown, former FBI agent Wilfred Rattigan, and transformational and controversial Spanish Town pastor Bishop Rowan Edwards. So for the next hour, stay with us as we look at this very significant, very troubling, and even vexing issue of crime in our communities. These are the issues in all of Jamaica. It's not all doom and gloom, though, as we will be exploring the role of the Christian church in making our communities better. But first, let's set the stage with some facts. Check this out.
When Jamaica became independent on August 6, 1962, the murder rate was 3.9 per 100,000 persons, which was one of the lowest murder rates in the world at the time.
Fast forward to 2005, Jamaica recorded 1,674 murders, for a murder rate of 58 per 100,000 persons, the highest murder rate in the world.
Since 2009, Jamaica has consistently been registering more than 1,000 annually, primarily sparked by gang-related violence, where illegal firearms are usually the weapon of choice in the commission of these crimes.
Here's something else for you to ponder on. Because of the large number of persons falling prey to crime or violence, the treatment of these persons has become a major drag on the local health sector, as millions are spent annually on the treatment of these persons. Millions. Can we truly afford that? Our first speaker today is former Sissoko Head and Superintendent of Police with 34 years of service in the JCF. She's a holder of a Bachelor of Arts degree in English, a Bachelor of Laws degree, and a Master's degree in National Security and Strategic Management. SSP or SP Gladys Brown Ellis. She's also a lecturer, author, motivational speaker, mother, and a pastor. Welcome, SSP Gladys Brown.
Thank you so much for having me. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is a timely endeavor that we have taken part in this evening, and my task is to look at the whole idea of youth and the role that they play in crime, and the fact that many of them are crime producers. The task of the JCF is now to choke off the young people, so to recruit them in a way where we can take them away from the crime and violence and to get them on our side before the gunmen and other influencers get them. So what we have done is to revamp the national youth clubs and the police youth clubs, and to have engage the youth in those special programs. So we would have been involved in police youth club business for quite a while, and it would have slowed down a bit. But since the pandemic, we would have dreamed up of a lot of activities by which we have planned to get their attention and their focus and re-energize them and focus that energy in a positive direction. So we have decided to re-establish the old youth clubs and to open new ones so that we can channel their energies and their focus in youth club activities like we used to do in former years. And we have seen where it is working, especially in Area 2, where I am the administrative officer. Area 2, of course, consists of St. Mary, St. Anne, and Portland. So what we have done now is to bring back the physical activities such as national sports for all youth club. We would have had the area sports from Area 1 to Area 5. And then we have the national challenge where all parties, all group of areas would participate. And so we have invigorated the minds and hearts of young people. And this is a way of getting them on our side, because make no mistake, the gangs are recruiting them from very early, especially in schools. And so we have our SOS, our schools officers, who would go into the school and start to build the relationship and to sell the idea of the youth club. We have also established the cadet corps. Yes, we have opened a cadet academy at the National Police College of Jamaica, where the cadets are now taken in from between 15 to 17, and they are groomed and coached and monitored and supervised and developed, to become officers of the force. And if they are not interested in that area, then we would channel them into other positive areas where their energies can be harvested and channeled into productivity for Jamaica. Gone are the days when we allow our young people to become gang members. We are now reaching out as police officers to get them before the gunmen get them. That way, we are hoping that it will not only ease the mothers and the fathers' minds, but it will cut down on crime. It will put a dent in the availability of young people for gang activities or joining of gangs or other nefarious activities. And we want the wider Jamaica to play their part, to play their role. If you see a young man who you can mentor such a one, advise them that there are means and ways that they can be trained and their skills can be garnished to be put in a positive direction. We want to know that young people grow up with the idea that work is there for them, and becoming a part of a gang is not something that they should dream of or idolize. And so this evening, I believe that the role that the police is playing can assist It's not just sending them to Sunday school, because when they go to Sunday school, there must be somebody there who will also channel them when they start to reach 16 and 17 and say, yes, we have done our part here in the church, and we want to put you in a cadet corps, put you in a setting where you can do your CXCs. Because even I teach law to the cadets at our National Police College, and they are grabbing onto the concept like, water and flour. It is a new concept, in a sense that you don't doubt their ability, but what we have been doing is to show them that they have the ability to do anything they want to do, whether it is become a lawyer, a doctor, a police officer, a soldier, teacher, anything. So we give them the opportunity, especially if they did not do well in school, to get back into school and to do CXCs and to channel their minds in areas that they sometimes did not recognize that they have the ability to work in, such as the legal area. Yes. And so we believe that in another couple of years, we will have most of our young people in a meaningful way being channeled into the society in careers that they themselves may not have envisioned. The Jamaica Constabulary Force's aim and desire is to ensure that our boys in particular become meaningful members of society, contributors, persons who will assist us in cutting down crime and violence, in ensuring that gangs are brought to justice. And with the church, working closely with the police and the society, I am excited about the prospect, and I believe that we can conquer anything that comes as a challenge. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak.
Thank you so much, SSP Gladys Brown Ellis. Of course, you touched on some very important topics, some very dear to my heart. The youth, especially getting to the youth before the gangs do, is extremely important. Also, channeling youth towards the police youth clubs, keeping them active with sports, the redevelopment of the cadet academy, and working with youth 15 to 17 years old, that very important age group. You've talked about getting the wider audience of Jamaica involved in mentoring, and that leads me to some questions that I'll probably ask you later. But of course, some very important things that will definitely impact the youth of Jamaica. And we know that the youth are very highly involved in crime. Next up, the founder and host pastor of Lighthouse Assembly and general overseer of the Lighthouse Assembly Ministries, Bishop Rowan J. Edwards. This Poplanish pastor is not only controversial, but creative in his thoughts and approach to fighting crime in the former capital of Jamaica. This has led many to see him as the chief architect behind many transforming social and spiritual activities there in Spanish Town. Many will also know him as the father of the accomplished and well-loved recording gospel artist. It's a great day, Jermaine Edwards. Welcome, Bishop Rowan Edwards.
Thank you, Sir Steve. Now, every detective who will be looking at a crime first have to decide why this happened. If a house is burned down, the fire chief has to check the cause of that fire. The person who will do an autopsy has to check the reason why the person died. Well, first, I'd like to address and ask the question, why did we get here and how did we get here? Where our country is sinking because of murder. We have to, as a people, look back, because where we are at this moment is a bad place to be. And so, as we take this time to look at some of the situations that we're faced with as a nation, I'd like all of us to understand that where we are is a bad place. In 1962, our murder rate was 3.9 per 100,000 people, the best and the lowest in the world. By 2005, we got to 1,675 people, which represents 58% per 100,000, or 58 per 100,000, which represent 58 per 100,000. Ladies and gentlemen, why our murder rate is so high? We have to examine that. Where did this start? It started with our politicians. How do I know this? Because what happened in the 70s between the PNP and the JLP, the two major political parties, is what we're seeing as a result of what took place there. Of course, some of them already confessed that they gave guns to criminals to defend their turf and to make sure that they stay in power. Now, why this happened? The whole aspect of what took place then is really serious. If guns were given to gunmen in order to protect their power and to maintain power, it is serious. But you see, the men who the guns were given to became wise. They used the guns to do extortion. And when they started to do extortion, they found out that they're making more money than the politicians themselves. Now, I also want to say that because of the things that these politicians were doing, they create a divide. Garrisons are fighting against garrison communities right now. And remember, a couple years ago, the fight was between the PNP and the JLP. Green up against orange. Well, that has been changed now, because we're not having political rivalry anymore. The political rivalry has now switched its portfolio and has become gang rivalry. Now, I said all of that to say this. If it started with the politicians now must get into it deeply and try to have it solved. I'm saying the two political party leaders right now are clean men, and any of them could take the nation to its next level, but they have to visit the past. Why we have so many garrison communities fighting against each other? Because the divide started when they set up their political system to maintain power. Now, I would love to see the two leaders stop fighting. And we don't use murder to say it's politics. We cannot be using politics at this moment to defend your turf or to defend what you're saying. Both leaders must come together and help to solve the problem, because the problem started with political leaders. Now, the church is coming in boldly. The church, we're doing our best to work with both political parties. And don't hit me, please. You know that the One Order gang is connected to JLP, and the Klansman gang is connected to PNP. Let me repeat. The One Order gang is connected to JLP, and the Klansman gang is connected to PNP. Now, because of what happened then, we are now seeing 400 gangs in Jamaica. Remember, we have 3 million people here with 400 gangs. Haiti has 13 millions, and they have just about 150 gangs. So you can see what happened then, breathe these kind of gangmanship. And so we now have to step in to see, the church has to step in now to see how much we can help to restart this nation. We have some suggestions of how we can restart the nation and get it going good, because it's my belief that Jamaica can return. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my brother. And of course, a recap of what he's mentioned as Bishop Rowan Edwards. We are in a bad place. We are in a bad place. And I think as we preach, we say before you can get your deliverance, you've got to be honest about where you are. And he went over the statistics. We were number one in the world, the best in the world, with 3.9 per 100,000 in 1962. And in 2005, we moved to 58 per 100,000, the worst in the world. Guns have been given to gunmen over the years, included by the politicians, and the crime wave was started by the politicians. And Bishop Edwards said that the politicians themselves must now come out and be the motivators to the end of the crime wave. And the two leaders must stop fighting to bring the country together. He mentioned the two gangs, the two major gangs, the One Order and the Klansman gang, belonging to political parties, and that there are over 400 gangs in Jamaica. 400 gangs in Jamaica. Obviously, a gang does not consist of one person, so there are hundreds and thousands of young men involved in gangs, with only 3 million people in Jamaica, whereas in Haiti, with 13 million people, there are 150 gangs. And Bishop Edwards concluded by saying the church must step in. I will back it up and say the church must get beyond the walls if we're going to impact our country. Our third guest today, Wilfred S. Rattigan, a premier, high-achieving and experienced former federal law enforcement manager with the FBI, security expert with specialized knowledge and experience in the full spectrum of diplomatic relations, private industry, government agency collaboration, and law enforcement tactics, training, and strategies. He applies creative approaches and to current and emerging threats. Rattigan is an experienced attorney and a legal instructor with emphasis on government consultancy, administrative matters, real estate, immigration, criminal, and law enforcement issues. Welcome to Wilfred Rattigan. Good day, sir.
Bishop Blair, thank you very much for having me on the program. Thank you to your organization as well. I have witnessed and participated in crime fighting on a global level. And the first takeaway is that you cannot, and I emphasize that, you cannot fight crime without qualified, experienced, dedicated, independent, visionary, knowledgeable, and reliable crime fighters at the top of the organization. If you don't have good leaders, you're wasting your time. And I'm not talking about managers or placeholders. I'm talking about leaders. You have to develop strategies as a leader. You have to be able to listen and invite criticism of your ideas. You have to be flexible. And you have to convey the message in a way that it's understandable to the troops. You have to inspire your troops. And you have to be unafraid of pressure, political or otherwise, which means you have to be independent and you have to be objective and free from taint. The second aspect is that your organization, it must be streamlined. It cannot be anachronistic. And I use that term in reference to the JCF because it's coming from a construct of the 1870s and it hasn't changed much. They've tinkered around the edges, but they need to revamp that system so that it's more receptive, it's more streamlined, and you can get information at a quicker pace. And it has to be able to effectively and efficiently deal with the challenges. Recruitment is another aspect. It should be based on qualification. And my understanding is that you need 5 CXCs, including English and math, to be considered for an entry-level position in the JCF. And that's fine. But you also have to appeal to one's sense of loyalty, honesty. You have to select candidates who want to join the fight to reduce crime and bring a level of safety, security, and reassurance to the public. You have to find people who consider it a national duty and a privilege to serve, not just joining for a salary. And I saw that in Japan. It's a national privilege for those men and women to join the police over there. And they take it very, very seriously. Corruption is not tolerated at any level. And I could go on and give you more examples, but let me move to the next point. Resources. You have to give the police resources. Recently, we learned a few weeks ago that the JCF, the Ministry of National Security, was given 92 billion Jamaican dollars for maintenance and so on regarding the JCF and other agencies. And as of 2 weeks ago, they had spent 17.5%. I have actually spoken to the Police Federation, and they tell me that they don't have enough bulletproof vests, helmets, body cams, pepper sprays, collapsible baton, but cars, vehicles, and good working conditions. There are a few other things that weapons. Sometimes they have to sign in a weapon. The government doesn't issue them weapons, all of them. So some of them, they come to work without a weapon. They have to sign that weapon out. And when the shift is over, they sign it back in. And then they go home defenseless. And some of these men and women, they live in high risk communities. So you can just imagine the dangers they face. So resources, you have to give the resources. Training. I mean, that's one of the things that the FBI, it lives and it dies by training. They train you to death. There's a plethora of training. There's no shortage because they're making sure that you're equipped to go out and do the job. Remuneration. You cannot pay a police officer 70,000 Jamaican dollars per month and expect that temptation won't rise to the fore. You cannot. That comes out to 400, I think, and 50, 60 American dollars. And how do you expect somebody to live on that salary, especially if they have a family? And with inflation, because the salaries are not earmarked to deal with inflation. So whatever they were paid in January of this year, and whatever they could purchase in January of this year, they certainly cannot purchase. They don't have that purchasing power with that 70,000 Jamaican dollars now. Working conditions, need I say more? Retention. You have to have a plan to keep your most qualified people within the force, or otherwise you're going to lose them to private industry. And I've seen this all over the world. In fact, in South Africa, the Minister of Police is a dear friend of mine. And one of the things that he mentioned was that he was trying to tie their contracts to their training. So, for example, if he had to send you somewhere to get training on in cyber, for example, when you come back, your contract will be extended, saying that you will stay with the police for for 2 or 3 years. You're not going to get that training, come in, get some experience, and then leave. No, it has to be tied to a time period. Um, a crime plan, very, very important. You have to have a crime plan. That's one of the things that the police, they're telling me in Jamaica, they don't have. But they do have the crime plan. The crime plan cascaded from the National Security Plan into something called Plan Secure Jamaica. Now, crime has taken on a transnational nature and is increasing at an alarming rate. Gone are the days when you could only commit a crime by having a physical presence in a country. Now you can stay in one country and you can commit a crime in another country. For example, cyber, money laundering, wire fraud, bank fraud. Another thing is you have to protect your borders. Jamaica has approximately 150 illegal points of entry. And that's not, those are not my words. They're coming from the Ministry of National Security. How do you do that? Don't forget, a plane crash landed off the coast of Clarendon, and it will be 2 years, I think, next month. And up to this day, we don't know about the black box. We don't know about the passengers. We don't know about the contents, except that the minister said that the passengers left the country. How did he know that? Who are these?
Again, thank you. Thank you. Your time is up.
Oh,
Well, looking at all that he's mentioned today, all that he's put forward, you cannot fight crime without qualified people. You have to develop strategies. Organizations must be willing to modernize and must be able to deal with the challenges. Corruption cannot be tolerated. Resources must be there. Training must be there. Salaries must be looked at constantly in order to avoid corruption. The working conditions must be constantly updated. Retention of staff is important, and there must be a crime plan. That's why we have this program today, looking at how we're going to solve the problem in Jamaica, especially from the church's point of view. Thank God. This is the ACCM's Wellsprings, and we'll be right back, right here with you. Based on a World Bank study done some 5 years ago, crime is costing the government of Jamaica $68 billion per year, which is approximately 5% of the nation's GDP per year. Welcome back to Wellsprings. I'm your host, Pastor Harold Blair, and this is your wisdom for the world, from the Word for a better world. Well, let's continue our discussion on the role of the Christian church in building safer communities. Our guest, Attorney at Law Superintendent of Police Gladys Brown, former FBI agent Wilfred Rattigan, and famous, well-known 10,000-man pastor, March pastor, famous Spanish Town pastor, Bishop Rowan Edwards. Folks, so far we've heard your presentations, and there's so much to discuss, so many questions. Just have to say that I've enjoyed listening to your presentations. Superintendent Brown, from your vantage point as a police commander in the field, what are the main factors of crimes in our communities? We've heard the talk about the gun. Are there other factors that we can be looking at?
The question you're asking is what is driving crime?
Yes.
The word on most persons' lips is unemployment. But from a police perspective, we don't think it is unemployment, because there are lots of jobs that our young people can get, and training is available for them. The HEART program, the LEGS program, the OAK program that the government is providing. And many of them are not interested. Many of them don't want to stay in school. By the time, and even since COVID, we have had a greater challenge in that many of the young people who left school during COVID have not even gone back into school. Some are still at home, some are on the street hustling. You go to 3 miles and other major stoplights, halfway 3, even Portmore stoplight. You'll see many of those young persons out there cleaning windscreen in the guise of working. So what is driving crime is a lot of the unemployable young men
Yes.
in particular. Not that you don't have young women, but young men in particular who are not interested in working 9 to 5 to get a living, but to get quick money, whether from scamming or from breaking a shop or from holding up someone so that they can buy what they want to buy, which would be the latest clothing.
Very interesting.
Because
I meet
these
so
money that
many young people.
themselves.
I mean, so many young people that tell me that they'll never take another job because they've seen how scamming has benefited them, and
Yes,
they say that
reward.
they gave the system every opportunity to assist them, whether to they were trying to get into the universities but they could not find the funds, or it just things weren't working out for them, and somebody, as always, in the gang makes a presentation or talks about scamming and they head in that direction. Is there a role for the church in stopping all this violence that's taking place and the perpetrators? For you, SSP.
Yes, there is. There is. Because in the majority of cases, Pastor, and I can challenge you on this, it's very, very rare that you will see a pastor's son out there killing persons, a police officer, a soldier, a teacher. Very rare you will see those persons, children, out there
Yes.
running up and down killing persons. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's not the majority. It is not something that you see every day. I'm sure my son is a soldier. Do you know what I did? When he was very young, he did not know what he wanted to do. And I said, you know what? I'm going to channel you into the army until you decide what you want to do. That place will be safe for you. That
Yeah.
place you will get 1 or 2 lessons. You'll get a sense of direction and you'll be able to focus. And we
Well,
went in and he started.
that's a very important decision you made, because my father, who was in the army, dictated that his 4 sons join the army or the cadet, and all 4 of us went into the cadets to get the discipline that we needed to move on in life. So that's a very good decision. But that leads me to a question that I posed to Bishop Edwards, because Bishop Edwards, as much as we talk about the church becoming involved, it's obvious that the situation with parenting in our country, how we and Bishop Edwards, your mic is muted, right? But the issues with parenting, and they talk about single parenting and the single mothers being fathers. A lot of people don't realize how these situations impact crime and impact our country.
Definitely, sir, I'd like to make my input here, because the whole aspect of fatherlessness, a lot of homes right now. A study was done by the University of the West Indies that they found out that in Jamaica, roughly 70% of our homes are without fathers. More so in the inner cities, communities. It is dangerous to have boys, especially boys, growing up without a father. What has happened is that the fathers are either in prison or just get the woman pregnant and disappeared in the thin air. And this is breathing a whole lot of problems in the nation. So therefore, we have to deal with the whole aspect of getting the fathers involved in the children's life. I've worked with several schools here in Spanish Town. One particular school has over 300 boys who are delinquent. Now, when a child becomes delinquent, especially a boy, he's a prime target for the gang leaders. The gang leaders would grab him, give him a gun. Gun looks nice and pretty. Hold it in your hand, boy. And the boy would hold the gun in his hand and say, this is yours. But in order for you to be initiated in the gang, you have to make a duppy. And so this is why the Ministry of Education, up to a couple of weeks ago, that there's roughly 800 boys between the age of 14 to 17 which have become shutters. This is dangerous for any nation to have our little boys who we are sending to school and they become gang members. Now, the church has been playing a very pivotal role. As a matter of fact, most of the schools in Jamaica are church owned, right? And we, the who own school, the churches who own school, we are making sure that we put all the programs in there to help boys who are delinquent.
But
And we
Rev,
see that working.
Bishop, I have a question, and I'm going to be very tough. I'm a former prison chaplain. I've been in the system. My question, though, is the church prepared? As I listened to Mr. Rattigan speak, he talked about the police having the resources, having the training, having the salaries, and are we strategically prepared to make a difference as a church?
We are prepared. We have been doing our best, but we are not law enforcers. The church is not a law enforcement program or entity. We are an entity that works with the spiritual life and a holistic basis too, but we're not law enforcers. The government is responsible to make sure that they put in all the programs that relates. What are you going to do with a boy, a young boy, 18 years old, who has an AK-47 in his hand? What are you going to do with him? That's his livelihood. What is the law enforcement people doing where that boy is concerned? You offer the boy a job. He doesn't want to do a job because he can use that AK-47 and make $1 million by extortion and by lateral scamming in less than a week. You give him an 8 to 5 job. He doesn't want to take that because he can make quick money. What the church can do about that? All that we can do is preach that young man and have him saved so that we could take the gun from his hand. Apart from that, there's nothing more we can do. We have tried it. A lot of churches, we have all kinds of programs out there. We do skills training. But most of the churches who are doing skills training is only women. Most of them is just women. The boys prefer to go this route. Thank God for those of them who have been transformed. We have seen quite a number of them who have been transformed because they have been sticking with the program. We have trained over 400 men in mentoring here in Spanish Town through NIA and the Jamaica Brothers Group. Over 400 men in Spanish Town. We taught them the whole aspect of mentoring. We mentor them, they mentor others. And that has been stopped by the government because NIA doesn't have the money to push it anymore. So it is something that is seriously happening in our country. The church, as the church, we're doing our best, but the church needs help also with the financing aspect of it.
Superintendent Brown, you did mention mentoring earlier also. And obviously the church can't do it on its own. How is this being put together throughout the nation?
And that's where the collaboration would come in. We find most of the churches are packed with women, and most of these women are single parents with more than one child. And so this is where the unity and the working together should come in, where the pastors can say to the mothers, if you have your young children, we are not telling you to turn them into policemen or policewomen, but they can get them into the cadet corps, because the cadet corps now, or the cadet, is where you groom them to make them worthwhile citizens. They may not want to stay in the police force, good. They may not want to go in the army, good. But they would by then have somewhere that they would have seen or be suitable for, where we can recommend, say, all right, we're going to channel you into this. We call Mr. Issa, we call Mr. Rattigan and say, can you take 2? Can you take 5? Can you employ 10 young men? Because by then they would have been groomed. They would have received the programming, the art program, the case studies, the teaching to make them into employable young persons. But we can't do it without the parents. The parents have to say, yes, I have a 14-year-old. Next year he will be 15. I want to enroll him in this program. But I didn't know that there was such a program. I didn't know that you have the cadet corps going over by the training school. Oh, the
But
youth
should that be something mandatory? I don't know. I mean, I'm seeing so many young men on the roadside with nothing to do.
we
Um,
get
if
to the parents
I
and
mean, we're
ask
spending
the parents to
$68 billion
allow it.
a year,
Hmm?
could some of that money be transferred to become a preventative measure rather than a reactive measure to
Yes, but
get
we have
these
to tap
guys into
those
a
young men.
mandatory program?
We have to tap into these young people from their 14, 15 and get to the parents too. In most cases, the fathers are not there, but the women are there and they will want a better life for their children than they got or the fathers got. And so I'm saying it is important that we get to the parents from the child, especially the boys, are 13, 14, and plan ahead for them. Are we going to take them into the cadet corps or training school, send them to the O program, get them into the early cadet corps in the army? Because we have the cadet corps everywhere.
Wow.
But a lot of Jamaicans don't know about it. So we need to do some PR and get parents, when you go to parents school, parents teacher meeting, let us advertise these things. Let them know that it is up and running and that we are willing to put in some money. We may not be able to take more than 50, but it is 50 less young men than the gunmen will get.
Let me bring in Mr. Rattigan here. Mr. Rattigan, welcome once again. The talk is $68 billion being spent for the crime situation in Jamaica. How can local law enforcement and community influences like the church counter and neutralize the effects of the international crime syndicates and those here in Jamaica?
Well, Bishop Blair, thank you for having me again. And let me start by saying that Bishop Edwards made a very good point, and I applaud him for his efforts and what he's doing. And I will pray that he will be successful or continue to enjoy the success that he's enjoying. We need more people like him. But let me segue and say this: in Jamaica, there's a sizable amount of number of churches that preach the prosperity doctrine. The government is preaching the prosperity doctrine, but the people are not prospering. When you have a minimum wage of 9,000 Jamaican dollars per week, it comes out to, I think, 60 US dollars per week, which is 12 US dollars a day. And that person has to feed a family, transportation costs, food costs, schools, all that. You're sending them in a different direction. Now, the church, and I've watched it carefully over the years, they have something called prayer breakfast. And I've often wondered, I've never seen any statistics as to what became of these prayer breakfasts. What impact did they make on crime? The other thing is that the church was responsible for this document, a document called the Consensus on Crime, which came out in 2000. It was signed by the Prime Minister, leader of the opposition, Jamaica Chamber of Commerce, PSOJ, Jamaica Council of Churches, as well as the Jamaica Umbrella Group of Churches, Reverend Dr. Peace Garth and Reverend Newton Dixon. Now, this document is as close as Jamaica will come now to a crime plan because it lays out what needs to be done to address the crime issue. And in addition to that, it has timelines. But you go ahead and you read this. The timelines haven't been met in most instances. They haven't been met. And so my question is, where are the churches in this? Why aren't they pressuring the politicians saying, look, we have a social contract. There's a social contract called the Consensus on Crime between the government and the society. And you guys have failed us on this. You need to do better. I haven't seen anything. And so the idea that you're going to have a reduction in crime because of a document is, to me, it's not going to work. Also, if you look at the pass rate for CXCs over the last 6 years or so, I mean, the students who took the exam, the number I think is over 100,000. And of the 100,000 plus, only 40 something thousand passed 5 or more subjects. And the police, they require 5 subjects. So you're looking at 47,000 people that will be eligible to join the police. You're also looking at about 100,000 people that have nothing to look forward to. So there's a pool for the gangs. There's a pool for the gangs. and there's also the pool for the churches. So the question then is, what are we doing as a society to deal with that, with those unemployable and unemployed? Even though Jamaica has the lowest unemployment rate on record, right now you have upwards of 60% of the population making minimum wage or less.
But Mr. Rattigan, that's where we are now tapping into. There are young people who are not doing well in the school setting. We are extracting them now. And we are asking the parents, once you recognize that, to link with the police, get in touch with the police, because we are taking them now from the normal school setting and putting them in the cadet corps, where they will be getting the same CXCs and the same CAPE teaching, but in smaller groups and with people like me who care to teach them so that they can pass the requisite subjects to join any institution in Jamaica, to include the Army and the JCF.
SSP Brown, what you're saying is laudable, it's commendable, it's noble. But what I'm saying, we come from Waterhouse, right? And when you look at the people down there, the youngsters down there, and what you see hopelessness, right? And then also what you see is you see competition, a competition between the churches and the gangs. And so they look at the churches, or they look at somebody offering them a job, paying them $9,000 a week, and they look at the Don who, by the power of a gun, nothing else, by the power and the influence of a gun, he's able to rake in thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions per year. And so you look at, you ask the young man or the young woman, you said, okay, who would be more influential to you? Going into the church, joining the cadet, or this guy standing on the corner who has all the power in that community? That's what you're up against.
But it's not just the power, it's the fact that he makes himself available. He's there, he gives them, he sends them to buy something, he gives them money, and it continues on and on. And here's the problem, SSP. The problem is we have the plans in place, but we've not spent the money to market these plans. And I've been saying the same thing about the Vision 2030. But I would say this to each of you, that recently, about 2 weeks ago, that the PIOJ put on a community engagement seminar with churches. And we really want to see not just the churches, but all the people in the plan you just mentioned coming together to make things work. Quick question for you, Mr. Rattigan, before I throw out a quick question, 30 seconds each. You once applied or considered the job of police commissioner yourself. What advice would you give to the present commissioner? And also, what are some of the suggestions that you would have in terms of the problems that we face?
Okay, I applied for the position of police commissioner 3 times. Twice because the Jamaican government asked me to, by way of the High Commission in South Africa. I was in charge of the FBI office in South Africa at the time. And the 3rd time, the Woolman's Boys 6th form, they asked me to do it. The advice I would give this police commissioner is this: he needs to be a leader. He cannot sit behind the desk. He has to come out into the community. He has to explain what is his role, his responsibilities, and include the community. He has to have buy-in from the community to say, listen, this is what we're trying to do, and this is how you fit into this. He has to have an intelligence capability. They've mentioned that, but believe me, they don't. They need a fusion center. They need a center where they can collate all of that information coming in from every single government agency. And I know this because I've run a fusion center in New York. I've run a fusion center in Mississippi. I've run a fusion center overseas. Very, very effective. It should be less talking and more action. And you have to provide the police with the resources.
Yes.
If you don't provide them with the resources, then we're going nowhere. And one of the key things in this consensus on crime was that they said, look, we're understaffed, and we're going to beef up the force to 14,000 in 2021. We're in 2022 and we're still at 12,000. So there's a lot of work to be done.
Right.
And I've offered myself to help in any capacity, free of charge, because I'm from Jamaica, and I'd love to see Jamaica get back to where it was back in the 60s that Bishop Edwards mentioned. And I'm not giving up. I think we can still go there. We just need to be more effective and more effective.
We can't give up. I'm going to give the other two guests maybe 30, 35 seconds each as we get ready to close. I'll start with you, SSP Brown. Just your wrap on our discussion today, and where do we go from here? You have 30 seconds.
I love what I'm hearing, and I believe that with the various entities and the representatives who are on the platform this afternoon coming together, we can do something. We can get a hold on the young people who are getting involved in gangs. But what we have to do? We have to get the parents involved, especially the mothers, because the boys don't respect their fathers. They're not there. And even if they are there, they are not somebody who most of these young men will respect. They themselves sometimes are involved in crime. So if we can get these mothers on board from we realize that they reach 12 and 13 to start harvest the boy's energy, harvest his mind and focus him in a particular direction. There must be a way we can break back of crime in another 5 years.
Thank you, Bishop Edwards.
Yes, I must commend SSP Brown for her contribution to this program this evening. Because you talk about cadets that have been trained. We are running a program now across the nation called Night of Hope, where we're Night of Hope, where we are historic Night of Hope. We just did it in Spanish Town. We did one in Portmore. So we're going across the nation. And what has happened? The Ministry of Education, they send out their cadets, hundreds of them, on display. They said they have never had the opportunity to come together, and so they have been doing this. When you see these boys, 90% of the cadets are boys, and it's so beautiful to see the boys coming out. That's the department I head under the 10,000 Men and Families movement. So we had it in Portmore, we're heading to Linstead, then we're going to Guysville, then we're going to Clarendon. So what is happening now is that we need to see the churches more involved in getting cadets on board. We're doing this in Spanish Town, where we put out our cadets from De La Vega City. It's such a fun, a joy to see these boys marching. They look so elite and ready for something big. So I want to thank you, Sir Rattigan, for the offer you made, to the government. Bring people on board who can help to take down this crime monster. We believe that it can be tamed. And I hate to see politicians up there now acting like though they are not a part of the problem. You are a part of the problem. You must have to solve it. Stop playing football with people's life. Don't play politics with people's life. Please, both of you men, try to get together and help to solve the problem of murder in this country.
Thank you very much, Wilfred Rattigan, SSP Gladys Brown Ellis, and of course, Bishop Rowan Edwards. A wonderful program. Yes, we work towards solving the crime problem. And one of the things we gathered from the program today, parenting and conflict resolution and indiscipline and corruption must be dealt with. If we can get the parents to learn how to deal with their children, if we can rebuild the nuclear family, then we will see a big difference. As we end the program, I'll leave you with this fact. According to information provided by the health sector, it treats approximately 2,000 gunshot victims per year, costing the government approximately $400,000 per day to keep a gunshot victim in intensive care. I'm Bishop Harris Steve Blair, thanking you for joining us today. Our guests, Bishop Rowan Edwards, Superintendent Gladys Brown, and Wilfred Rattigan. On behalf of all of us, including the executive of the ACCM, good night.